back to the Leaving the Shallows podcast. We're very excited that you guys are here with us today. And again, we hope that you guys have been enjoying all of the guests that we've been having on our podcast and just hearing all the different stories and the testimonies of how God has been moving in people's lives. And we just ask that when you guys hear an episode that you love and that really resonates with you, that you share it and so that it can get out to more people. And I know that like a lot of times, if you're not in the social media world, you know, on Instagram and putting out content, you may not understand how much it actually helps us when you share something. It really does help us out. It helps to get these episodes out to more people. And we really do want to get these episodes out to more people so that they can hear these testimonies as well. So again, thank you so much guys for being here. Today, we're really excited. Our good friend, Nicole Parsley, is on with us.
Hey.
She's both of our friends. I met her kind of in a funny way. I mean, it's not funny, but kind of in a unique way. We actually met online, I guess, via Messenger.
It's like a dating site.
Yeah.
What?
No, but that's what it feels like.
Yeah. That's funny. No, she messaged me because she had a dream and she wanted some help with it because she knew that I loved helping people out with dreams and helping them understand their dreams. And so just through that avenue, it's interesting how you can have a connection with somebody even just through messaging. And Nicole, I could see, like, again, I had never actually met you, but I could see your personality and your heart come through your words on the screen. And I was like, I like this girl. I like this girl a lot. And so that's how Nicole and I met. And, you know, obviously I've met her in person since then because she goes to the church that I used to go to. She goes to the church, same church as Heather. So they go to church together. So yeah. Nicole,
and we found out this weekend that we have the exact same birthday.
Exact
We're
same.
on the same day.
Exact same.
Which was Saturday.
Yep.
That is so cool. I love that.
We found that out.
And you both,
on Sunday.
that was yesterday or Friday?
Our birthday was Saturday. And we saw each other all day Saturday and didn't know it was each other's birthday. And then we figured it out the next day. And we're like, we have the same birthday.
It was crazy. I was like, oh. And that's not,
well, happy birthday.
Yeah, thanks.
That's awesome. I love that. So Nicole, before we get into your testimony, why don't you just take a minute, share a little bit about yourself, what you do, if you're married.
Yeah. So I'm Nicole. I am from Corpus. I moved to Austin in July of 2019, I think. And I moved here for my job, and I'm a nurse in pediatrics. So I've been doing that since 2019 and I love it. I've, done a little bit of travel nursing here and there, and that was a lot of fun. But yeah, me and my family now are here in Austin and we go to one chapel.
Nice. Cool. And you recently did get married, right?
Yes. Yeah. The most important part. Yeah. Yes. I'm married.
You forgot that part.
Yeah, I forgot. It slipped my mind. Yeah. I just got married, this October of 2023. So I've been married for 5 months.
Such a beautiful wedding.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yes, it was beautiful.
5 months. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Josh
still
and I, it's going to be
really
18 years this year.
Oh my gosh.
Ours is going to be 30.
Whoa.
I know. I feel really old. Hey, did you say you grew up in Corpus Christi?
I did.
Okay, so where did you go to high school?
I went to Flower Bluff.
Okay, so my husband and I grew up in Corpus Christi. I graduated from Carroll.
No way! Yeah. That's so
Yeah,
funny.
and he did too, but my husband's 6 years older than me, so anyway, but we're from there. My daughter was born in Corpus. Yeah, that's so wild.
That is
I didn't
wild.
realize that, Heather.
I know. I was like, wait, Corpus, were you just living there? Were you born there? Anyway.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Small world.
Yeah, you don't hear a lot of people from Corpus, so that's awesome.
Nope, not at all.
Yeah.
That's cool. All right. So I love that you guys both went to Corpus Christi. You both have the same birthdays. That's awesome. You're both some of my favorite people in the whole world. And so, Nicole, you and I were talking and you were sharing a little bit about what you're going to share today. And I'm really excited for our listeners to hear your testimony. So why don't we just jump right into that and you can start sharing?
Yeah. So like I said, I moved here in July of 2019, here in Austin. And I do have some family here, but some of them like weren't here yet. I don't really know why I wanted to go to Austin. But I just did. I was like, well, I'll just move to Austin. So I did. I got my job. I came to One Chapel because I Googled it. My church from Corpus, my pastor gave me a list of churches. I mean, it was a huge list. And for some reason, I don't know why, but One Chapel was the one that stuck out to me. And I literally judged a book by its cover. I Googled it and I said, that's a cute place. It's nice. It looks cozy. And I just started going. The friends that did move here, I don't want to say with me, but they moved here around the same time that I did. They weren't going to church at the time. So it was just me. And I remember I literally moved here July 5th, started work July 8th, went to church, I think it was July 10th, the first time in Austin. So it was boom, boom, boom. And I remembered I loved it. Like, I was really nervous about it, but I mean, it was amazing. And as every time I would go, you have the greeters there, and there was a sweet little old lady. She was so cute. And she's like, oh my gosh, hi. I guess she started noticing that I was going to church by myself. And she was like, oh, who are you here with? Oh, who do you know here? Just super inviting. And, I would just tell her, I was like, oh, I'm just here by myself, whatever. And she's like, well, you really need to get into a group. We have a young adults group. I'm like, okay. Like, she's just trying to set me up, right? Like, she's just trying to set me up. She wants me to get married ASAP. Like, I know this game. Like, I know how this goes. And I'm just not really about that right now. Like, I was truly just trying to find my relationship with Jesus and what that looked like, because I didn't mention this before, but before I moved there, I got baptized a week before. So my whole process was very quick. And I've always known the Lord, but I had never actually made the choice for myself to get baptized. And so I literally got baptized, moved, started my job. Like, I was super career driven, super focused. I'm like, I'm just here to like get what I need from church and go. Like, that's what I'm here for. So
who was the lady?
Sharon.
Was it Miss Kim?
No, it was Sharon.
Oh, it was Sharon.
It was Sharon. Not Sharon Parsley. It was another Sharon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm
trying to think of who that is.
The only person that knew, it was Cindy. She knew. She was like an FBI agent. She would always like pull up people. I'm like, if I ever go missing, you're my girl. Like, but so I don't know her last name, but I actually think she might be in like Travis right now. But I don't know.
I was wondering if it was Miss Kim, because Miss Kim was one of the first people that we met when we came to One Chapel.
Oh,
and she made us feel so welcomed. And she would come up to me and she'd be like, so Jackie, what's on your heart?
Yeah.
Where do you want to serve? Like, what is the Lord saying to you?
That sounds like Kim.
And I was like, that sounds like what just happened to you. So,
yeah. I mean, it honestly was that, it was that same, it was that same energy of like, what are you doing? Like, who are you coming with? Like, and that's what I really loved about this church, was that it was just super intentional. Like, she always remembered me, always. And I mean, that's why I kept coming. Like, I'm just like, she kept asking me, young adults. And I'm like, okay, like, we'll get there. Right. So one day I just decided, I have nothing to lose. Like, I didn't know anyone. I truly didn't know any like young adults at that time. And I decided to go by myself. Like, I was just like, okay, whatever. So I went, and I mean, everyone was so nice. It was so inviting. And from here, I'm just going to preface, like, this is not a love story. Okay. Like, this is a story about how faithful God has been to me in my life, but it's going to sound like a love story, but it's not. So I just want to say that. Well, there I met a boy, and we just started, we hit it off really well. He was inviting me to things, and not only him, but other people in the group too. Like, it was just a really good, just genuine community. And mind you, this is fall of 2020, right? So I'm getting in my groove. Now I'm working nights as a night shift nurse, and I'm going to group. I'm trying to get involved, just seeing what that looks like in my life as a 22-year-old girl in Austin. And then we started, me and, this guy started talking a little bit, and I was like, I'm done. I deleted all my Bumble apps, Bumble, Hinge, like all these. I said, done. Like,
you just knew.
I just knew. I was like, yes. And I remember he took me to, I think we went, God, I forgot where we went, but we went on a date somewhere, and we were just sitting there, and I think I had just met his parents, and I didn't know he was, I didn't know really who he was, who his parents were at this time. I was just kind of getting by, and I met his parents, and then he takes me to this really, really pretty spot, and I was just sitting there with him, and I think he was on his phone or something. I don't even know, but I heard this audible voice that said, "You're going to marry him. He's going to be your husband." Wow. And this is not a love story, though. Like, this is not a love story. Okay.
We gotcha.
Okay. So
we get it.
So I'm like, okay. And after that, y'all, I just I completely just gave my heart away, like, way too quickly after that. And unfortunately, it didn't pan out the way I wanted it to. He ended things. It was just after a month. It wasn't a big deal, but I truly thought that this is it. Like, this is my guy. Yeah. Like, this, I'm done. I don't have to worry anymore. God's got it taken care of. I'm good. And then, that was December, and then, COVID happened like that next year. But as I was still, I think COVID happened, like March of 2020, I think it was. And so I guess
because it was around our birthday.
That's right. Yes,
that's why I remember
our birthday.
too.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes. And so I think those 4 months between like November and March were really hard for me because I was still seeing him, right? Like, we were still in the same group of friends. I was still seeing him, but I was just absolutely wrecked. But partly was because I gave my heart away too quickly, But what was so interesting was that heartbreak, whatever you want to call it, situationship, I don't know. But like, that completely undid me. And at this time, I was set up with a lady who became my really good friend and my mentor. And she, literally from December, she kept seeing me during, just throughout that whole time, she really began to walk this journey with me. And that's why I'm so adamant about, like, if you're not in a group, if you don't have any, like, you need to get in a group. You need to meet people from your community. Yes. You have to try, even if you don't want to, like, that is, you have to do the hard things, right? To get there, Yeah. And so she was literally, it was December, and we just started meeting, and she's like, okay, Nicole, like, I know, she was so sweet. She's like, I know this guy broke your heart. Okay. But if we were to strip your nursing, your, you being like your last name, like all this stuff, like, who are you really? And I just bawled, and I'm like, I don't know who I am. And I think that's why I'm so upset. Like, I think that's why I'm so torn up, because I think I had all my hope in this, and now it's gone. And now what do I do? I deleted all my apps. So like, what am I supposed to do now? But like, I'm like, dang it. But, and so January rolls around, I'm still meeting with her, and we really just she was just so great. I mean, we dove deep into the Bible. She was studying with me. She was meeting me once a week. And at this time, it was still really hard because I was still not over this guy. But it wasn't just him. It was like, I don't think I am secure within myself. Like, I thought being baptized was it. I thought me being saved was it. And I'm done. I'm good. Right? Like, that's fine. But then I realized, like, there's so much work to be done, and I don't know if I'm ever going to get there. Like, I'm like, this is so hard. And I'm whatever, I'm 22, 23. Like, I know I'm young, but I think at the time, you know, you're like so egotistical of yourself. You're like, this is so hard. I'm like having a main character moment. Like, what's going on with me? And I kept meeting with Cindy, and I was talking to my friends back home, and you know, my really, really good friend, Sarah, I was telling her about it. And I'm like, Sarah, I'm so sad about this guy. And like, his family is like, just really like rooted in this church. And I just see him everywhere. And our friends, like, I'm friends with his friends, and it's messy. And she's like, and she's like, well, do you want to leave? And I'm like, I don't think no, like, I don't want to leave because of a person. Like, I don't want to leave because someone hurt my feelings. You know, and
that's hard.
It is hard. It is hard. And just being, and I say all this because I don't know who I am. I don't really have many friends here. My friends were his friends, you know, and I'm getting into my work gist, right? I don't know if you know many nurses, but like, we can be really mean sometimes. And so like, it's like that complex of like, oh, am I even good enough in my job? Like, I have no idea. I have no idea, honestly. I thought this is what I wanted, but maybe it's not. And she told me, she was like, you don't get to leave because of how you feel. Like, you're going to stay and you're going to work it out. You can go to a different campus if you want, but like, it's really rare that you find a community where they're genuine, authentic, and convicting you while supporting you going through what you're going through. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, sure. Okay. Crying. But at this time, I didn't know what he was going through. Like, when he broke it off with me, I truly had no idea why. And that's his business. It was his business. But I just felt like an outsider because, I'm here coming into his community. And it's, like I said, he was the one inviting me places. Right. So like at the beginning, but then as I was meeting with Cindy, she was like, no, you can invite people too. Like, you can do these things too. And I'm like, I was like, you're so right. I don't even know why I'm crying about it. Like, you're so right, you know. But this is what happens to people though. Like, you come into a new community and you begin to feel these things about yourself, and like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Like, no, you can go and you can do something about it too. So that's what I was doing. I was meeting up with people, you know. I that's how I met a lot of my good friends, and I actually did a retreat similar to the one that we were just at. And I was like, I told Cindy, I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. I'm going to dive into this, like, just wholeheartedly. And so I did. And it was a wonderful, wonderful, like 2 or 3 day retreat at the time. COVID still hadn't hit yet. Right. And so, and I got freed from so many things. I laid my life down again. Like, it was wonderful. But when I came home, I lived by myself at the time. Okay. So I didn't have any roommates. And when I came home, I began to experience the most terrible nightmares ever. And I didn't tell anyone about it because honestly, no one talked about it with me. And I didn't even really tell my mentor about it because I didn't know if she thought it was too woo-woo, you know. Like, I was like, I don't know if like she's gonna get me at this level, so I think I'm just gonna keep it to myself, you know. And that was the longest. March of 2020 was, or 2020 in general, I know is a lot for a lot of people. And I can like agree to that. For me, like that was the longest year of my life, truly. And as these nights were happening, I would wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning with something in my room, and I had no, like, you don't know, like if you don't know, you're not a threat. She always told me that, like when you don't know, you're not a threat, truly. And I would have to call my friends, and I'm like, I need you to pray for me. I need you to pray for me. Like, I don't know what's going on. And I'd wake up, you know, speaking in tongues. And I, like, it was just, I didn't even receive my prayer language yet. And that was like the crazy thing. Was I was just a constant battle, you know, but it was to a point where I was scared to pray in my own house. Like really, whenever I worked nights, right? So I'd always stay up till like 3 in the morning, and I'd pray, I'd read my Bible. That was like my golden time to spend time with the Lord. But that ended up being the scariest time of my life. Like I would try to like go to bed by midnight so that I didn't have to stay up, because I was so fearful in my own home. And then I couldn't sleep anymore. And I think it was probably a month or two after. Now it's COVID, right? So now at this point, it's probably it's probably April or May. And I meet up with Cindy, and she was so great. She was like, oh yeah, come over. And I'm like, you know, I'm a nurse, right? And she's like, oh yeah, I don't care, come over. And I was like, okay. And I finally told her, I said, I'm experiencing all these things, and I don't know why. I just got freed from like all of these like things that I had in my life that were rooted in my life. I didn't even know were there. And I said, I thought it's supposed to get better. Like no one told me anything. I had no idea. And she was like, that's when she really sat me down, and she's like, we're going to read Ephesians because now it's time. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But you know, she really opened my eyes on how, like, when you don't know, you are not a threat. And so as we were reading the book of Ephesians, like I really began to understand spiritual warfare, and I experienced it firsthand. Like they were, I mean, it was awful. Like I wouldn't wish that on anyone, but I also didn't realize the authority that I have in my identity. And not to bring too much attention to that kind of stuff, but like I didn't know when I got freed from those things, what Jesus poured into me to replace it, and how my authority was like, I mean, I'm a citizen of heaven. Like, you know, I'm walking one with Christ. Like I'm one with him. Like, and it sounds so cheesy. Like it sounds so like, oh my God, but it's so important to know those things, because when you do a retreat, when you get prayed over, when you do these things, like the enemy really does come, and he will come into your home. Like, and like, those are the things that I didn't even know. And I don't know. I've also, I mean, side note, I probably let some things in that I didn't even know, right? Like we talked about a door being a crack in the door being open, or a window being open, or whatever. And so I don't know, maybe I just wasn't completely cut off. Maybe I didn't cut off everything, but either way, I mean, I still felt, I mean, it was still an attack. Like I was still being oppressed. Like these things still happen. And so when she was going through these things with me, weeks were going by, and like, this is so, I mean, the timing though, like was so, it was a coincidence, right? Because I'm in this new community, I'm isolated, I'm living alone. I just got my heart broken by a guy when I thought I heard God, but maybe I didn't. So is he a lie? Like, you know what I mean? So like the timing was actually perfect when all this was happening. You know what I mean? And I'm a nurse, and then I was working with COVID patients, and I couldn't see anyone. Like, I mean, props to that. Like, seriously, like I fell for it. Like I did. Like like I fell for it, but at the same time, I didn't know. And so, like I said, it was never like, it was a heartbreak, but everything, I remember getting this picture of like me just starting to unravel. Like he gave that to me, and I didn't know what it meant at the time. It was the beginning. I didn't know what it meant at the time, But as these months were progressing and as I was studying the Bible with Cindy, those things were happening to me still. Like they were. But at some point, I just kept laying it down over and over and over again. And they stopped. And I think, you know, that scripture, how it says, you know, this kind only happens with prayer and fasting. Like that's true. Like some things you have to keep praying over, and some things are not always healed instantaneously, even though they can be. But like, that's a hard thing. You have to do the hard things over and over sometimes, and be consistent with it. And there's reward in that. And so afterwards, I was like, oh, I'm good. Like, you know, I'm sleeping like a baby through the night. Everything's fine. But then I'm like, oh my gosh, I saw him. Like I saw him today, and I saw, and I, you know, we'd go and like, he'd be there or something. And then like, you know, I was just kind of hearing more and more about his situation. And then I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. Like, I don't understand. Like, am I not it? Like, I thought he felt it. Maybe I was just making it up, you know, whatever. And so then it started unraveling again. Like I started spiraling again. But isn't that funny? Like I had just like prayed over myself with all this demonic attack, and then I'm like, oh my God, but I'm not good enough. I'm so stupid.
You were getting hit.
Yes.
You're getting hit from another direction.
Yes, exactly. And so like, and then some stuff, you know, obviously it's still COVID, like it's like the summer-ish, and things are still happening, and I still can't see my friends, and I'm scared to go back home because, you know, my parents are over the age of 50 and I miss them, and I'm alone, and like these things are still happening. I don't want to say happening to me, but they were happening. And I just kept meeting with my mentor. Like I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep doing this. And I remember telling her, I'm like, I don't know why I'm still so stuck on this guy. Like, I don't know what's going on with me. Like, I don't know why I don't just get on the Bumble app and just keep going, you know? Like I said, I don't know why. And she's like, because you're not who you were a year ago. You can't do that anymore. You know, you can't result to the same comforts like you did before. And I just remember like, I'm like, okay, well, I guess I have to just feel it. Like, I'm just going to go through it, and I'm going to feel it, and I'm going to hand it over to God. And this is so dramatic. When I say this is so dramatic, but I would wake up in the mornings and I would cry, and I would pray and cry. And I said, God, I know you can take away this feeling, and the fact that you don't want to really sucks, but I'm going to lay this down. I'm going to lay this down to you.
Good.
And even like, that probably happened for 3 months. I'm not kidding. Like that was an everyday thing. I was exhausted. Like I really was exhausted. And some of that was me, right? Like whatever. Some of that I was probably feeling way too sorry for myself. Whatever. But at the same time, I needed to learn what it's like to lay something down that I thought I heard. So I just remember I'm like, God, like I really thought you said this. Like I really thought, but you know what? Like you're still good. Like you're still my main man. You're still my number one. Like I'm still going to lay this down, even though I really hate you right now. Like I'm really upset with you. But whatever, you know, I was such a little brat. I really was. Like, I'm like defeating like demonic stuff. And I'm like, why don't you just give me this boy? Anyway, just being a girl. But then I remember I went on a trip. It was October now of 2020. And I went on a trip with my friends to California. And a little bit of restrictions have been lifted. I don't know if y'all remember that, but a little bit of the restrictions had been lifted. And so, you know, you can go on planes, whatever. So I flew out and met some of my friends in California. And we were on a road trip. And I just kept seeing his name everywhere. And I'm like, I'm not falling for that one. I'm not falling for that one. No. I said, I'm going to keep my head down because like, I know I can't just let that carry me through my faith. I can't let what I thought I heard carry me through my faith. Like, I'm going to choose to just love you because I love you, because of who you are. Like, that's enough for me. What you did on the cross, that's enough for me. And even if I didn't believe it, I had to constantly tell myself that. And there is power in our words. The Bible says that. Like, there's power in our words, and you have to say things out loud, even if you don't believe it for yourself. But that is how you literally change the pathways in your brain, is saying it over and over again. And so but man, he was taunting me though. I was like, y'all, like, this might be off the record, but there was just Taylor, parsley. That's like, my friends were like, oh, I want extra parsley on my food. I'm like, since when do you eat parsley? Like, I'm like,
yeah, you don't really eat that, right?
Yeah,
too often.
I know. It's just like, it was just the weirdest, like, it was the weirdest thing that I just kept seeing over and over again. But I come back and I remember, I guess now it's December, and he starts messaging me again. And I'm like, well, isn't it funny how they always come back right on schedule too? I'm just kidding. But I mean, at this point, I really hadn't been talking to him. Like, I would see him every now and then, but I was really, truly focused on like just meeting with my mentor, trying to make my own community, like with the church, and like making my own friends, and just being better at my job. Like, I'm like, let's just try to shift our focus. But I never really got over him, truly. And that really made me mad. And I know this happens a lot in our lives, where we're like, God, why can't you just like take this feeling away? Like, why can't you just like make him like look really ugly to me or something, you know? Or like, I don't know, just like maybe just do something to change my feelings, because he can do that, you know, but he wouldn't. And so then, I digress, but then he texted me, or he was messaging me, and I was like, okay, God, like, I'm not, like, we're just friends. This is very platonic. Like, I'm not gonna think that this is a thing, you know, it just is what it is. And I don't know, I think he was like house sitting or something, and we were at like a community event, and he's like, hey, do you want to come over with so-and-so? Like, all of us are just going to go to the house that I'm house sitting at. I'm taking care of their dogs or whatever. Like, do you want to come? And I'm like, okay, people there, check. Multiple people, check. Like, we all, you know what I mean? I'm like, okay. I'm not going to go like and just be with him alone, you know, because I'm going to start crying. So it was good. I know. I was like, so it was good that other people went. And I just remembered they had left early, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to be right behind them. And once they left, I just remember I asked the Holy Spirit, I'm like, I really need you to guide me, because my feelings are telling me one thing, and I know they're not real. And I really, really need you to like just give me a reality check right now. Like, I need you right now, and I need you to come through for me right now. And he sat me down, and he was like, I am so sorry for last year. And he just like went, but, like, it's almost like he was reading my mind of everything that I was so upset about. I mean, it was almost like someone had recorded my conversation with my mentor and sent it to him. I mean, that didn't happen. Oh, wow. I know, but I don't think so. But it seemed like he was just every single thing. And I'm like, I did start crying, because I just remember feeling so validated, and so, but not that I needed him to do that for me, but it was just like that was the Holy Spirit coming through. Like that was that. And like, mind you, he was giving me an answer to why things were happening and why they happened the way that they did. And I was just like, oh, I had no idea. I'm so happy that we did break it off. Like, I'm so happy, like that it was just different. And I remember thinking, like, he seems different. Like, he does seem different, you know, as the, like, I don't know, maybe October, November, December were rolling around and he was like messaging me, whatever. But I would see him and I'm like, God, like, he's walking differently. Like, his posture is different. Like, there's just something different about the way he's carrying himself. And I didn't know through that whole year that God was working on him too. I had no idea. And, spoiler alert, we're married, but
in case you didn't know.
Yeah, it was probably, we really kept it. I mean, we weren't telling anyone for like a month or two, whenever we started talking, because we just wanted to, he was being careful and I was being careful. And like, I mean, I had to learn to trust him again too, right? Like that, I mean, and that's still something that, like, even today, I'm still trying to work on, because it's like, this happened once, like, could it, you know, and that's just with anyone. With anyone. And I've had past hurts too. So it's not always, you know, it's not always that person's fault. It's just like all this other stuff that we carry, you know? But
it's where the enemy likes to whisper it in your ear, like, oh, can you really trust?
Yes,
you know,
exactly. Exactly. And so, I mean, as the months were going on and he asked me to be his girlfriend and all this stuff, I just remember thinking, like, God is so faithful. Like, he really is so faithful. And I remembered, like, hearing him and he was like, this is what I can do when you hand things over to me. Like, I can take care of it. This is what I'm doing in your life. And I mean, just throughout our relationship, like, he's just been, I mean, everything that I feared he's been a part of that healing process for me, you know? And I never told him that I heard God say, oh, we're going to imagine.
But he knows now, right?
He does know now. I remembered whenever we got engaged, I told him, I said, I have something to tell you, but I'm not going to tell you until our wedding night. Like, I'm going to tell you after we're married.
That's sweet.
Because I'm not going to be the freaking crazy girl that's like, God told me. Can you imagine? There are so many stories about that sometimes when you don't know them.
I have a story like that too. Like, with Josh and I. Yeah, because Josh and I, when we were dating, I didn't want to mess around, and I was like, okay, Lord, because I always said the guy I dated was the guy I was going to marry. And so we were only like 16, 17. I got married young. I was only 19 when I got married, and my husband was 20. But I was like, okay, Lord, if this is the man I'm going to marry, let him wear a red shirt the next time I see him. And I saw him and he wore a red shirt. And I was like, okay, let's do this again. And I was like, okay, Lord, how about a green shirt next time? I saw him. What was he wearing? He was wearing a green shirt. And I was like,
I don't know this story.
I'm like, I'm going to do this another time. Yeah. I was like, I'm going to do this one more time.
That wasn't enough.
And I was like, what color shirt does he never wear? I was like, white. And so I went to church and he was wearing a gray hoodie. And I was like, dang. But then he took his hoodie off and he was wearing a white shirt, and my mouth literally dropped. And I was like, dude, we're going to get married. He tried to break up with me twice when we were dating. And I was like, yeah, you don't stand a chance breaking up with me, because the Lord already knows we're getting married.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is so
Obviously,
funny.
I did not tell him that either, Nicole.
Right.
Because that's not something that you blurt out, because we don't want to mess with God's plans. If it is from the Lord, it will happen.
God said,
exactly. And that,
but I saw it more for you. Like, when you said that God told you that, I felt like the Lord gave you this huge piece of the puzzle because of the story you had to walk through. So that's how I was seeing it. Like, you didn't run to tell Taylor, oh, we're getting married, but it was like, it was a confirmation for you. Like, God said this, now you're going to go on a journey that looks anything like, and you had to learn spiritual warfare. You had to learn to lay something down, and you went through this huge story to learn trust, but God gave you something to hold on. That's how I'm seeing this. And I think it's so amazing. And it's like, I see, because we're hearing the other side of the story, and it's like, God was taking you on a journey, and you didn't know that Taylor was also going on a similar journey, but making you guys become the people that needed for him to have you guys be when you got married.
Absolutely.
I see like God did so much in y'all so that when he brought you together like that, it was a good space. Do you know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And I honestly, Heather, I feel like that's why that year was so rough. Like, I felt like I had grown, like, those growing pains, such a Christian term, growing pains, but like that was truly like, I felt like I had grown 5 years in my faith. Like, I was learning things like this, and I'm so happy that I had a wonderful person to guide me through that and tell me what that looked like. And like,
you had a perfect person.
It's just, but there's that, and there's something about being rooted and not wanting to run at the second something gets hard, like I had
that is hard.
I had every reason to go. I had every reason to leave. I wasn't, I was getting all these like demonic attacks or whatever, but I thought to myself, if I just left the church, this probably wouldn't happen. Right. If I could just chill and just leave this, I think I'd be fine. Like the attacks would stop. And like, my friends were like kind of my friends, but not really, because it's COVID. So I'm not really seeing each other. My job, I'm like, I don't know how nursing's going to look 2 years from now. Like, what am I doing here? Like, is it going to be this horrible? Like,
it was like the roughest season ever for a nurse.
Yeah, it was just, it was like, it was awful, truly. And I don't know. I think God would have blessed me and done all these great things for me too if I did choose, but there is something to staying where you're at and seeing it through. Like,
Amen.
There is something about being rooted. There's something about not running from the hard stuff. And yes, there are times where God calls you elsewhere. I know, abuse.
But this was different.
Yeah. This is different.
This was you running because the enemy was trying to put the heat on you because God had this bigger picture for you, bringing you and Taylor together, and you guys have this plan and purpose, and the enemy's like, oh, let me just steal this. Like, let me turn up the heat as much as I can. And if you had bolted, he would have felt like the enemy would have stolen that. But you like you said, that shows the importance of having someone like you had a mentor like Cindy. She's, I know Cindy was older than me, and she's an amazing person, and you had someone who had a lot of wisdom and revelation that could walk you through. And I think that should really speak to the listeners, even how important it is to have somebody, for all of us to have somebody in our life at all times that can help us through those things. Right. And I know, like, man, just hearing you like going through an identity crisis and, laying something down that, that the Lord gave you, man. Jackie and I, like, we've done podcasts on all these on spiritual warfare.
Yes.
Those three things are like three big ringers in the Christian walk, and you just got them all at once and you made it through. No, I mean, really
20s.
Though. And you are young, and sometimes we don't, walk through all that at once, but the way you walk through that is going to carry you so far because you've already learned such valuable lessons on big things. But I've learned too that in spiritual warfare, that's often when we learn to fight in that's often where we do figure out. We have to figure out our identity. And it's like you said, I don't know who I am. None of us know who we are until we have to figure, we can only find that out in Christ. Like, we're all a hot mess. And then we have to feel like, okay, wait, I have no idea who I am until Jesus defines that for
Yep.
me. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so that's huge. You know, I love that you were able to pull all of that from that journey. That's
Yeah.
such a powerful
Mhm.
testimony to what Jesus can do. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, yeah, I guess that's true. I guess most people, it's usually separate events, but I'm glad. I mean, I don't know. I guess that's true, but I'm so glad that, like, and this is why it's also good, like I said, to have a community, have people speak into your life, because I had my friend that's like, you're not going anywhere. Like, you're gonna
Yeah.
stick through it. And it's, you know, you need friends around you that speak life into you and that convict you. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I know you're feeling
Yes.
like this, but you're not gonna feel like this forever. Like, you're gonna be
That's
okay,
so true.
you know? And like, this is what the Lord says
Mhm.
about you. And like, and it's so easy to believe that about other people, but for ourselves, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
like, I don't know why we think we have this complex of like, not me.
It's for everyone
Yeah.
else. Yeah.
Like, I'm too special. I can't. I'm too broken. I'm too whatever. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, we're just the
It's
same.
like you can have like faith. Like I've always been like faith that can move mountain for anybody. And one time I was sitting in a church service, this was years ago, and I heard the Holy Spirit say, but you don't have faith in yourself. It's exactly what you're saying. It's like, we can't see it sometimes for ourselves, but I can pray it into existence for someone else. Like, it's like, wait, what?
Yeah. And
it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I love how you learned early on, because I had to learn the same lesson of when God gives you something or tells you something, but then it's like, but not yet. And then you have that struggle of like the in between, and you start to question yourself and start to think that you're crazy, like with you hearing the audible voice of God saying you're going to marry this man, and then you basically, like, everything around you in the natural looked like the exact opposite.
Right.
And I have had those moments too in my life, and especially when you just couldn't let him go. It's like there was an attachment that was intentionally not being broken.
Yeah.
Right. But that's happened in my life too, where God's dropped things in my heart and the natural looks completely different. And you're like, but what do you do with that? And I love how you're like, okay, Lord, I don't understand this, but I trust you. I'm going to put my faith in you. And I think that's so good, that when we go through seasons like that, where we know that God has said something, we know that God has given us a promise, but it's like there's this not yet attached to it, that in that moment you can either let it go completely and just be like, yeah, I'm crazy, and just not trust that it's going to happen, or you can try and force it to happen in your own timing, which both of those are not what we should do. But what we need to do is we need to, it's God giving it to us and then us giving it back to him.
Yeah.
It's the Abraham and Sarah
Yes.
and Isaac story.
Yeah. It's hard because it seems like it's counterintuitive to give it back when God's given it, right? But God dropped it in your heart because he was going to do a big thing. He was showing you, like what Heather said, he was giving you that thing to hold on to, but then the reality of your life looks so different. But I'm sure it was always there, right?
Yeah.
You're like, but I heard this, but I heard
You're
this.
like, I know I heard from
you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. But now, and Heather and I have talked about this too with my life and her own life. A lot of times you don't see the full picture until you're on the other side. And then when you come on the other side, then you put all the pieces together and you're like, oh my gosh, God, you did that. And then what that does is later on in life, when you see stuff like that happen again, you're like, okay, Lord, I remember when you gave me a promise, how the things in the natural did not look how I thought they were going to be, but it turned out according to your will.
That's so
and
good.
Because you did it then, I
We'll
know you're going to do it again. Right?
Yeah. And that builds our faith.
That's why
and we
I
don't
journal.
freak out the next time.
Put the little
journal
Because when you journal, you're literally writing those things down. Like, I hope that you wrote this whole story out, Nicole, because in your life, there's going to be moments where God's going to give you dreams. God is going to give you promises, and it's going to look nothing like it, but you're going to be able to look back and be like, but God, you came through me here. So I know you're going to do it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amen. Yep.
Yeah.
So good.
Do you journal, Nicole?
I started, it's funny.
She's like, I am today.
I will start again today. I started.
Let this be your first thing you write down.
Yes, no, it will. It will be. And I did write down, like, I mean, I wrote down parts of our story, but I need to like write it all down. And I don't really journal that much day to day. I just, excuse me, I feel like I do better like talking it out, but maybe I need to do like voice memos or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you could do that. And like the purpose of it is it's amazing how the enemy comes in and tries to make us think, well, that didn't really happen. Did you actually hear him? But if you write it down, and when God speaks to me, I try to write it down in the moment, because even 10 minutes from now, I will doubt that I heard God's voice.
Yep.
Right. And so when it's written down in 5 years from now, you know, when the memories are kind of, they're there, but where the enemy can come in and make you doubt, you wrote it down when you experienced it.
Yeah.
And you're like, no,
this is what I heard.
You can, yes, this is exactly what happened. I wrote it down when it happened. You can trust that you wrote it down when you heard it, when it happened, and encourage yourself 5 years from now, 10 years
that's
from
really
now.
good.
Yeah, that is good. Yeah, that is good. Just like little bits and pieces and reminders of how faithful, like how faithful he really is. And I just, you know, you hear about these stories and you're like, oh, there's no, you know, in the Bible, like, okay, that's so great. That's such a far thought, you know, like 2000 something years ago. And today it just looks different. Like miracles and stuff, they just look different now. And, you know, I come from a family of divorce. You know, both my parents were married a couple times. My stepmom was married a couple times. And I never thought marriage was in the picture for me. Like, I think marriage is a miracle. Like, it's a miracle in my life because I never thought I would get here. I never thought that was something God had tucked away for me. And they just look different now. You know, not to say that things, you know, healing and stuff, that still happens today, but I just feel like, you know, generations now and just technology and stuff, it just looks different than it did back then. And so, you know, although, you know, I'm not putting my kid on an altar and sacrificing him or attempt or, you know, whatever, but it's a different type of sacrifice. And so, which I think that's important to learn too. People come back and, you know, they just try to rebuttal you and, you know, all this and that about the Bible. It just looks a little bit different, but it's the same principle. Like it's the same pattern.
The same principle.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we talk about a lot. And like the Old Testament stories, we might not physically live some of those things, but they very much spiritually apply to us.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they do hold a lot of weight because, you know, like the Abraham and like we were talking about Abraham and Sarah, you know, they were given a promise. They heard, they had to wait. It's your story.
Yeah.
It's my story. We all have a different version of it. But we can all relate to the story. And then at some point we were all asked to go lay it back down and surrender it back.
Yeah.
And you have to trust God in that. And every, you know, that's a wild story when you think about it, because you're like, well, we haven't, like you said, I'm not physically going and laying my son on the altar, but we all can relate to that story, you know, in our own version and stuff. And I think, you know, that's what makes it so amazing that the word of God like that is so alive, active, powerful, and how these stories relate to our literal lives. It blows my mind.
Yeah.
So I love your story, Nicole. And I know that there's going to be lots of people that can relate to this. And, but before we close, what is one thing that you would want our listeners to take away from your story?
Get in a group. Like I said, this wasn't supposed to be a love story, but like it happened that way. But truly, like I am a believer of community. You need to get in a group. You need to get involved. You need to be faithful. You need to serve. Like it might serving may not be like, okay, I don't really feel like serving on the coffee team, or I don't feel like I'm called to the coffee team. I don't feel like I'm called to the, like serving is not about you. It's about other people and what they need. And I feel like that's just now, it's all about, well, what do you feel called to do? What do you want to do? And it's like, no, I need to get involved in a group and see where the church needs me. I need to be more open to what God wants me to do, not telling God, I want X, Y, and Z, and I want this to happen in my life. And, but biggest thing is get in a group, get involved, join the community and stick with it. Like, okay, maybe the first 2 Sundays weren't that great. Okay, like, why don't you wait 6 months to a year? There's something about being obedient and sticking with it, and if you're not, if it's not for you, you're gonna know. So that's what I want everyone to take away from this. It's so good to be involved.
I love that, because like throughout your story, the community is what carried you through that. I mean, obviously God carried you through, but the community made a huge difference in that season of your life.
And
your mentor.
And you know what, like, it was hard because some of my friends were like his friends, and it was just kind of like weird, but I was still able to find like my group of friends and my mentor. I mean, like, it was mostly just kind of one person for a long time. I mean, she was pretty much like one of my only friends, really. And but she encouraged me to say, hey, I can invite people too. Like, I can do these things too, and this is your place too. This is your home also. And but it is the community, and we need that. Like, we're called to serve. I mean, Jesus had 12 disciples. You need your group.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, as the former groups pastor at our church, you know what I'm going to say to this whole plug that you just gave about community. But, with Jesus, it is 100% him, and it's a both and it's 100% exactly what you're saying. I mean, he designed us for relationship with him, relationship with each other, to be in community, everything you're saying. And when we can do both, in a lot of times people run from community, like you said, or serving, or the relationships, because it's like we have to be vulnerable there, and we have to lay all our junk out, and we have to get in each other's lives, and it's messy. And I think the pastor at our church wrote a little book called Messy Church, and it's really good. True. If anyone's listening, you might want to read it, because it's literally what we're talking about. And it's just it's where we work the things out, and it's how God designed it, right? And it's when we can get over ourselves and be vulnerable with other people, man, like, God really can do something in that. So I love that you didn't run from that, and you stuck through that, and that you're kind of plugging the local church. But I mean, I love the local church, like that's what God designed. Like, he called us to live in community together, and there's no other way around it. And so I think that's an amazing testimony to that, and allowing people in your life, because the story could have ended different if you had allowed the enemy to, let you run off, and, things like that. He comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And this shows the faithfulness of God, because you said, I don't know, here I am. I'm just going to stick to this. And I think that's a huge testimony to how God can work in our obedience, even when we don't see it. So thank you so much, Nicole, for coming on today. I loved hearing your story. I love all of our Jesus stories that we keep sharing, because each one is unique to the person, to the individual. We're all in different walks of life, but each one is powerful and shows, I think we say this every time, how God's just in all of these details, and he's such a personal God in our stories, and it's huge. And I just love hearing them, and they encourage me just to stay faithful and stay with Jesus. But listeners, we love you guys so much. We're so glad that you tuned in today, and we hope that this episode blessed you. We ask you to follow us on Instagram and check us out on YouTube, and you can also listen on your favorite podcast app. And we would love for you to share it with your friends and leave us a review.